Good morning, everyone. Nice to see everyone. My name is Liz Braden, District 9 City Councillor, and I am the Chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Housing and Community Development. Today is November 22nd, 2024. This hearing is being recorded. It is also being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-TV and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, FiOS Channel 964. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.housing@boston.gov and will be made a part of the record and available to all councillors. Public testimony will be taken at the end of this hearing. Individuals will be called in order in which they signed up and will have 2 minutes to testify. If you're interested in testifying in person, please add your name to the sign-up sheet near the entrance of the chamber. If you're looking to testify virtually, please email our central staff liaison, Shane Pack, at shane, shane, .pac, P-A-C, at boston.gov for the link, and your name will be added to the list. Today's hearing is on docket number 1298, order for a hearing to discuss the current status of the elevator system in Boston Public Housing, BHA Developments, and docket 1644, communication received from Kenzie Bach, Administrator and CEO of the Boston Housing Authority regarding certain information under Section 17F pertaining to the Boston Housing Authority elevators. Docket 12898 was sponsored by Councillor Ed Flynn and referred to the committee on March 6, 2024. And docket 1644 was sponsored by the administration and referred to the committee on November 6, 2024. I am joined this morning by my colleagues, the lead sponsor, Councillor Ed Flynn, and Councillor Erin Murphy, City Councillor at Large. And I have also got absence letters from Council President Ruthie Louis-Jean, Councillor Enrique Pepin, and Councillor Brian Worrell. I will read those into the record now. Dear Chair Braden, I'm unable to attend the City Council Committee on Housing and Community Development hearing on dockets number 1298 and 1644, a hearing to discuss the current status of the elevator systems in Boston Public Housing Authority developments. It is important that our seniors and individuals with disability who are disproportionately affected by unreliable elevator systems have the means and mobility to live unencumbered. Their access to essential services and the quality of life are heavily impacted by these challenges. I support all efforts and resources to address these concerns and work collaboratively with the Boston Housing Authority on comprehensive solutions. Should you or any member of the public have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out to my office directly at 617-635-4376. or Ruthie, RUTHZEE, Louijeune, LOUIJEUNE, at boston.gov. And sincerely, Ruthie Louijeune, President of the Boston City Council. Councillor Enrique Pepin sent a letter of absence. Dear Chair Braden, Mr Clerk and Council colleagues, I regret to inform you that I am unable to attend Friday's Committee on Housing and Community Development hearing on dockets 1298 and 1644. My staff will watch the live stream and report back to me with notes. I will follow up with any additional questions upon reviewing the recording and my staff's notes, and I will follow up with any additional questions by reviewing the recording. Sincerely, Enrique Pepin, City Council, Boston City Councillor District 5. And dear Councillor Braden, Councillor Flynn and Council colleagues, I regret that I am unable to attend today's Housing and Community Development Committee hearing. Please know my staff will be in attendance and I will review the video when it becomes available. I look forward to learning more about the status of the Boston Housing Authority elevator systems. Thank you, Councillor Brian Worrell, District 4. So we'll begin with brief opening statements from my colleagues, Councillor Flynn and Councillor Murphy. Councillor Flynn, you have 4 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for chairing this important meeting. In my 7 years in the Boston City Council, I don't think there's a more important meeting than the one that's taking place right now. I called for this hearing today as many of our elevator systems in Boston Housing Authority developments are aging, and there have been frequent reports of elevator breakdowns in BHA developments in my district over the past few years, including the Ruth Barclay apartments in the South End, Torrey Unidad in the South End, and St. Botolph in the Back Bay South End area. I do know that St. Botolph has received money, so we're able to fix and ensure that those elevators are working. However, I am concerned how this has negatively impacted the quality of life and the safety for our residents, including our seniors and persons with disabilities. In the last year, we have heard primarily from tenants at Ruth Barclay Apartments of getting stuck in elevators skipping floors, and elevator repair parts taking a long time to arrive. Seniors and persons with disabilities have expressed frustration to me at not being able to leave their apartment for as long as 2 weeks, resulting in missed medical appointments, not being able to pick up groceries or medicine. I have concerns that some of these conditions violate federal and state laws, including the Americans with Disabilities Act. Today, I am hoping to get a better understanding of what the current financial maintenance plan is for aging elevators and those that are out of service. I would also like to know if these issues extend beyond BHA developments in my district, which I do know that is the case. BHA only fulfilled part of my 17F request, and I was hoping to get more information about a comprehensive review of elevators at BHA developments across the city to see if this issue is impacting other neighborhoods as well. I also want to recognize the BHA administrator for being here, Kenzie Bach. I also want to acknowledge an outstanding commissioner for persons with disabilities, Krista McCosh, as well, an exceptional advocate for our seniors and for persons with disabilities. And I think I probably represent more constituents living in public housing than any district councilor in the city of Boston. So this is personal to me. Also, it's personal to me, although I'm fortunate enough to live in an apartment, in a house with my wife, but I'm also a person with disabilities as well, active in the disability movement, especially in the veterans community. But want to acknowledge that we have a lot of advocates here from the persons with disabilities community. Thank you for your support. Thank you for supporting others that have disabilities and also want to live healthy lives and equal access. And that's what probably the best federal legislation enacted in the last 60 years is the Americans with Disabilities Act, providing equal access to everybody, especially persons with disabilities. We have to be in compliance with federal law. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. We've been joined by our colleague, Councillor Durkin from District 8. Councillor Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you to the panelists for being here. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I agree with what Councillor Flynn said, probably one of the most important conversations. Thank you, Kenzie, for being here to answer a lot of the questions we have, and I hope by the end of this meeting, we hear a lot about, years of disinvestment into our BHA housing. Yesterday there was a hearing, which I also think is very important, about the disinvestment that we've made into our schools and our pools. But what are we going to do, and what is the plan, and what is the priority? And thank you, Commissioner McCosh, for being here. Maybe Age Strong should be here too, but I know you'll do a wonderful job uplifting not just the disability community, but the seniors also. Anytime at an event just yesterday, the Condon Community Thanksgiving Dinner, I think my colleagues would agree, you probably leave with 2 to 5 concerns from BHA residents with, real concerns about not just elevators, but, the safety of their living conditions, but also, work orders that need to be done and maybe not being addressed. So I think this is an important conversation and a relationship that we have to continue with open communication about how do we field a lot of these concerns at the same time, making sure that our role on the council when we're leading into the budget season again, how are we making sure that the BHA has the funds to make these required improvements in something like elevators and making sure ADA and federal, I would assume we'd start losing federal grants if we're not complying with a lot of their requirements, and we should be, right? We should need to make sure that people don't feel stuck. And it's true when people say that, they stay in their apartments now because they're afraid that they won't get out. So hoping that by the end of this meeting, we have a plan to move forward to help ease the concerns of our residents in BHA. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Durkin, do you have any opening remarks?
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you so much to Administrator Bach for being here. I think she knows that we both share a true love for Mission Maine and the one public housing location in my district. And I'm really just interested to see if you have any thoughts on sort of bracing for the federal government's disinvestment in public housing, which I know may have some impacts on our capital projects. So that's why I'm here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Durkin. Let's see. I'd like to now introduce today's panelists testifying on behalf of the administration. Administrator Kenzie Bach from the Boston Housing Authority and Commissioner Kristen Kosh, who's the Commissioner from the Commission for Persons with Disabilities. And we also have a second panel, which will be Dawn Oates from the Play Brigade. So we'll start with the administration first. Administrator, you've had a few hats in the last few years. I get confused. Thank you, Administrator Bach. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you to Councillor Flynn for introducing this matter, and Councillor Murphy and Councillor Durkin for joining us, and to all the councillors who sent letters. I'm really looking forward to this conversation today. I will run through some slides and then happy to just take council questions and talk through. I think that, and a number of the councillors alluded to it in your comments, I think that this is an area where we are all deeply aligned in what we want to see happen. I think for the Boston Housing Authority, we're very proud to, be the largest houser in the city and to be housing a lot of people with disabilities, elders, families, and for us, we always want that housing to be dignified. We want systems like elevators to be reliable, and really, from my perspective, when I think about what the interest of us, of the council, of the residents, we've got a number of residents who you're going to hear from later, I know Play Brigade is here, Boston Center for Independent Living, which just celebrated 50 years. I think that all of us really want to make sure that our elevator system has the investment that it needs. And obviously, as I'll go through in my slides, one of our frustrations is that we don't necessarily get that, but I think that this council has already shown a real sense of partnership on that. And so I want to thank you for that and look forward to further partnership. And I also really want to thank Commissioner McCosh and Andrea for being here. I think that just the partnership that we've had over the last few months talking about this issue is really, to me, kind of representative of what of the tremendous value of having a disabilities commission in Boston is not just that it is a good place for people to bring issues for the community of people with disabilities, but that the commission helps all of us who run other departments and agencies to think about how what we're doing serves people with disabilities, and that work really penetrates into what all of us do. And I think the commissioner is an incredible partner on that front. So I'll give a quick run through of some of the sort of the overview of the BHA elevators and where we're at, and some good news and some challenges, and then maybe pass it over to Commissioner McCosh just to speak a little bit, and then I'm happy to take your questions. So I have the clicker. Is it still this laptop that I have to point it towards?
There you go.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, let's go to the next slide. So the Boston Housing Authority overall has 104 elevators. And I do think, I was saying this before we started to someone, I think that, you know, when you look at public housing developments nationwide, we have a sort of higher proportion of elevators because of the fact that we're a denser city. So there's lots of cities in America where they never went up to this height. And there's also a lot of cities in America where they did do family high rises, but they demolished them, right? And so for us, I think we have a disproportionate number of elevators compared to public housing portfolios nationwide, which I think is great because it has enabled us to house so many people in so many neighborhoods of the city. But it does mean that the fact that HUD doesn't have a formula for sort of giving us extra money to deal with elevators kind of hits us particularly hard. So in the elderly disabled portfolio, we have 47 cabs. So these are doubles or triples, and 4 cabs that are single, that are non-redundant. So a non-redundant elevator, right, is when we only have 1 cab serving those units, and then redundant is when we have multiple. So in the elderly disabled portfolio, we only have 4 that are non-redundant, and 2 of those are being addressed by a current capital project. Obviously, the advantage to us of having a second elevator next to the first one is that if one has a mechanical issue, then you've got the other one running, right? And so a challenge that you'll see is that in the elderly disabled portfolio, we mostly have redundant elevators. In the family housing portfolio, we only have 10 cabs that are doubles, that are redundant. Those are all at Ruth Barclay. And then we have 37 that are singles, non-redundant. So those are across Mildred C. Haley, Alice Taylor, Ruth Barclay, and Commonwealth family developments. And so, and one of the things that happened historically was that when there was an earlier recognition several decades ago that it was important for the Boston Housing Authority to provide more housing that was accessible to people with mobility needs, a number of units in the family developments were converted to being those units, which is an awesome thing for housing access, but it means that we put a number of those units on single, non-redundant elevator cores where they weren't before. And so that's just some of the historical context. And then we have a handful of elevators in our administrative buildings. Councillor Flynn alluded to the fact that, you know, one of the places where we've had the greatest trouble recently with the elevator portfolio is at Ruth Barclay, which has 15 elevators. So the right side of this page just has a kind of breakdown of those elevators and what addresses they're at and how many cabs there are at each. Let me go to the next slide. So this is the broader kind of capital budget background. The BHA has approximately $1.5 billion in deferred capital needs across our federal portfolio, but we only receive approximately $30 million per year in federal funding to address those needs. That's very challenging. That's 2% of the need. And that's for everything, right? It's for roofs, it's for ventilation, it's for, you know, fixing sidewalks, it's everything, and elevators are included in that roll-up. And just to sort of demonstrate the inadequacy of that, so that kind of comes out to an annual capital budget per federal unit of about $4,000, which means that if you multiplied it at Ruth Barclay, where we have 414 units, which is about 5% of our federal portfolio, you're talking about $1.73 million. So anybody, and there's a lot of elevator experts in this room, anybody who knows elevators knows that you're going to eat through that like way too fast, right? And so, and just in general, anybody who knows roofs knows that's also a huge, so basically, right, that as a result, the Boston Housing Authority is stuck playing whack-a-mole, where we have to build up larger sums of money to do singular major capital projects, but it means that in a given year, we can't have that scale of capital project going on at all sites simultaneously. So it's a very frustrating situation. It is one of the reasons why the Housing Authority is working on a number of conversions over to other subsidy platforms to try to get our units to have, to just get more money from the federal government and more private investment. So that's why we're doing what we're doing at Mary Ellen, at Charlestown, at Whittier, at Old Colony, at Mildred Haley, and actually Councillor Durkin referenced Mission Maine, a development that was one of the original Hope 6 redevelopments for the Boston Housing Authority, and then recently got a major reinvestment. And that's just an example where there's one mid-rise building, there's an elevator, and that just got a major elevator reinvestment through that funding mechanism. So this is like one of the things we spend a lot of time thinking about, is how to get ourselves out of this situation, which really does come from decades of disinvestment. However, we do pull money together to do these larger elevator projects. So I mentioned earlier that we have one that's happening at Commonwealth Elderly, which is the addition of 2 redundant elevators. That's a project that obviously involves breaking through walls and that kind of thing. And that is nearly finished. We're expecting completion by the end of next year, which is, I think one of the frustrating things here is that that's sort of nearly in our timeline of just how long these projects take. And then Councillor Flynn also mentioned Torre Unidad, where we've had lots of challenges with those elevators. They serve a very large building. They're quite intensely used. And so there also we have this $5.4 million capital project that's due to be done by the end of next year. We just finished an elevator modernization project at Hassan. So that was recently completed. We're very excited about that. Hassan is kind of in Mattapan, for those who don't know. And then my big exciting announcement today, and it's one that I want to express a lot of thanks to the council for, is that we did last week put out the design RFP for doing a modernization of 8 elevators at Ruth Barclay, which is something that has been a long time coming. And honestly, it was really the $4 million that was authorized by the council in the capital budget that was passed in June, plus this $1 million that we hope to be able to access in the state bond bill, and then combining those with resources from our capital budget that puts us in a position, we think, to actually do the design and get going on that. So that's very exciting for us. For folks who, just because I know it's lingo, and again, there's a lot of experts in the room, but for those watching at home, when we're talking about elevator modernization, we're talking about a situation where you actually rebuild the whole elevator and get a new elevator in. As opposed to when we talk about elevator upgrades, we're often upgrading the controllers, the parts behind, but it might not look that different to you if you see it. So, and one of the things that I've learned is that on both fronts, we have very unique buildings, and everything has to be measured, and everything is bespoke. So unfortunately, there is no world where you just order an elevator and it shows up and you can say that's the amount that it's going to cost you per building. You have to have this design contract in advance to literally measure the elevator shaft and figure out what you're going to need. But I'm just really excited. We sent out a note about this, so some of the residents will have heard about it yesterday, but I just wanted to share that because I do think that getting those 8 elevators and some of those, if you go back a slide, they're two slides. They're the ones that are in these 10 and 13 story buildings. Obviously, those are buildings where if we have elevator failures, it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem, frankly, in any of the buildings. But what's nice about these 8 is that they're 4 redundant pairs, and so what we'll be able to do is do the modernization 1 cab at a time, so that we don't have to relocate people out of the building in order to do that work. I should say that the housing authority, one of the things that we're always struggling with is the fact that we have very low vacancy. Which is to say that we are housing people. That's our mission. And as everyone in this chamber knows, Boston's in a housing crisis. So it means that we don't have lots of room to relocate folks into. And so that's a constant kind of challenge for us. So I guess I should have jumped to this slide. So this is recently approved city and state support will enable BHA to improve additional elevators at Barclay. And we've issued this RFP, and the timeline of that is to award a design contract in December, January. So just want to say again, thank you to the council for the support on that front. And then additionally, we have a signed contract with United Elevator for upgrades to both cabs at 42 Harrison Archway. And we also have signed contracts for upgrades at 10 and 20 East Brookline and 29 Monsignor Reynolds Way, which is similar to what we did last year at 19. And all of those, we've signed the contracts, we've given notices to proceed, and we're expecting the work to commence in January. I know in the case of 482 Harrison Archway, there's one part that they are waiting to have come in. It's a door opener, I think. And as was alluded to in some of the opening comments from Councillor Flynn, sometimes waiting on parts is the rate limiting factor for us, which again is frustrating. Next is just to say, I wanted to just zoom out for a second to say that the BHA's had a whole bunch of recent operational changes. We had some retirements and shifts just after COVID, and so most of the folks on this slide, I'll read through them, but have started in new roles within the last few weeks or months. And that's really exciting. I think it's a really exciting data-driven team that is working on updating all of our systems and processes. Like, nothing happens immediately, right? Everything is a process to kind of figure out what would work better, but this is a team that I'm really excited about. So our Deputy Administrator for Housing Programs, David Gleisch, who's over here, David, can you wave, now has oversight of public housing programs. We've also got a new Chief of Maintenance and Inspections, Josh Uftring, a new Director of Maintenance, John McDonough, a new Chief of Public Housing Programs and Compliance, Kelly Cronin. And then we actually created and filled a new regional manager operations position who's dedicated to overseeing elevator contract management. Joey Sanchez, can you wave so people can see? Yes. So one of the things that we've identified about the elevators is that our contract management is just as important there as what we do on the ground. Like, it's really about making sure that we're going to have the best possible relationship with our contractors so that work moves as quickly as possible. And then we've also created and hired a new Director of Customer Service position, Greg Mastrani. And I wanted to mention that because I think that even though it's not our main subject today, whenever we have an elevator issue, it interfaces with our work order center and our work order line and the emergency response systems. And I think that one of the things that has come out, in the conversation about elevators is just how, the response that folks get there is not always consistent and not always what we'd want it to be. So we're very proud. We got Greg, we stole him from Winston Flowers. So we're very excited about his kind of like customer service ethic and trying to think about how we make sure that we have a more consistent response on that line for all of our residents. And so he's just been in for about 2 months now, so he's getting his arms around everything, but we're really excited about that. This is just a bit about our elevator down protocols. So we updated these in early 2024. I think folks will remember that we did have an extended elevator outage at Ruth Barclay at 19 Monsignor Reynolds in September of 2023 into October of 2023. That was the first month that I was leading the Housing Authority. And I think it raised for us just that we needed to have a more consistent set of elevator down protocols that we're gonna have the BHA staff able to sort of act more proactively in those situations. So we updated those in early 2024. They were redistributed at our 2024 managers meeting, and we've been doing trainings, and we're gonna continue to do trainings on these. So these are protocols that address precisely what actions BHA takes when an elevator goes down. So it's different depending on whether it's redundant or non-redundant. This has to do with accommodations for residents. We can have tenant coordinators on landings, chairs. We also do hotel stays and where appropriate and approved transfers. And so we've been updating and training on that. And we did go over these recently with the City of Boston's Disabilities Commission. I will let the commissioner speak in a moment. And I think that, what we feel is where we've landed in terms of what's written down is pretty strong. I think the two areas where we really want to continue to strengthen, one of them is in accessibility to residents so that they know what our protocols are so that we can share those better. So that's one of our things that we're working on is because it's a lot of different situations and sort of how do we make that easily communicated so that people can say, hey, isn't this supposed to happen? And then I think the other thing, right, is just consistent training, because even though we do training, we also have staff turnover, and so making sure that that's a consistent thing. But we are working on this kind of updated flyer for residents. And then the other thing is we're working to improve the precision of our One Call Now messaging service. So we have something that allows allows the BHA to text, call, or email depending on what preferences people have put out about an issue. And it actually, if elevators are down, it works well in a single address building, so like an elderly building, but we've run into issues with the family sites where the messages will say an elevator's down, but people don't know if it's which building it is. And because they're pre-translated, it's more complicated than you would think to have that specification at the beginning, but we're working on that. It's something that I know Dawn and others have brought up with us. This is just a little bit about elevator contractors. We do have to follow state procurement rules on our elevator contracts, and that has to do with both how we bid them out and how those contracts are structured, which has sometimes been a challenge for us. They need to be DCAM certified contractors. We break those contracts up into a number of different bundles because there's really no elevator contractor in the city who's able to service the scale of sites that we have. And we're currently operating under purchase orders, so sort of short-term contracts at Ruth Barclay. We have a good arrangement with our former service contractor there who's doing these kind of purchase orders for us. But very exciting that this week we've received multiple qualified bids for a new multi-year service contractor for Ruth Barclay. We have put this contract out to bid several times and not received responsive bidders, so it's a big deal for us to have those two. And we've also been making invoicing and other protocol changes to improve the attractiveness of those elevator contracts, because we obviously need people to bid. So that's been a big part of Joey's role, is to help make sure that folks feel comfortable bidding, and we're really glad we've had those two bidders. I'm going to just speed through this because I want to get to councilors' questions and to the commissioner. This is just some materials about other things that we've updated recently, which have to do with how we log elevator downs, have to do with streamlining communications. We've been in much more direct contract with the state's Division of Occupational Licensure, their Board of Elevator Regulations, and we have this email now, elevators@bostonhousing.org, which is, it's what we've told our vendors and our regulatory partners and others to email us at, just so that nothing gets lost, goes down the cracks, goes to a staff member who then retires or something like that. But I'm saying it publicly because if there is an elevator related issue, if it comes through there, we'll be able to triage it. And we've also been updating our internal quality controls just so that we have more proactive checking of the elevators by our laborers, dealing with past elevator phone outage issues by testing these mobile phone devices that a lot of folks have transitioned to in other portfolios. And I mentioned this before with Greg's work, but retooling customer service protocols at our work order center. And then the last slide, second to last slide I have here is just about fire alarms. So it's a required feature of our elevators that if there's a fire alarm, they go to the ground floor and then they have to be reset by somebody who's qualified to reset them. And so that is also sometimes a frustration. And so, one of the things that we're very focused on is how do we make sure those resets happen as quickly as possible. But obviously the other thing is to try to reduce the frequency with which fire alarms happen in the building. We want a fire alarm to happen 100% of the time when there's a fire. But if there's something where there's an opportunity to, control, for instance, we often have people breaking into buildings and then we have smoking in the building resulting from that. So it's something that we've been working on in terms of both just repairing entrance door locks and having more frequent patrols. But we're also, this is the last bullet on this slide, working on this capital project to install Butterfly MX, which folks may have seen in some housing. It's a sort of screen that you use to enter. It's like a doorbell system, but it has a screen component and it goes to people's individual mobile phones. And we've gotten it installed now in 5 of our senior developments, and it's just great because it's more convenient for our residents, because if someone's there who you want to let in, you can do it without going all the way downstairs. But it's also, because right now what happens with some of our older doorbell systems, sometimes they break, and then even if they're not broken, people will just press them and people think, oh, I'm waiting for an Amazon package, and they let somebody in and it's not the Amazon package. So we've installed these. We wanted to make sure that they would really work for our residents, but our residents have been loving them at these first 5 buildings, so we're now working on a procurement contract to roll them out to all the elderly disabled portfolio, but also in a bunch of family sites, especially those where we've had doorbell and access issues, and Ruth Barclay is on that list. Yeah, so just a few next steps coming in December, January. A lot of these I've alluded to, but I just want to kind of summarize them here. So I mentioned that we have these upgrade projects, 42 Harrison Archway, 10 East Brookline, 20 East Brookline, and 29 Monsignor Reynolds that are signed, that are contracted, and we're expecting them all to start in January. I think, a challenge that we definitely have in the elevator space is that there's been lots of times where timelines slip because of the parts, and then people feel like we told them one thing and a different thing happened. So our hope is that we're gonna get real nailed down times for that work that we can then share in a site-wide letter in December. So we're working hard on being able to nail that down so that we can be accurate. And then we also want to get this design contract awarded for the 8 elevators at Ruth Barclay, where we're looking at a full modernization. We've set this time frame as our deadline for really kind of putting this informational flyer together based on the commission's recommendations, and I know we'll work with them on that before we put it out. I should say, obviously, that the BHA, whenever we put out information like this, we put it out in the languages that the people speak at our developments. So at Ruth Barclay, that's heavily Spanish and Chinese, both Mandarin and Cantonese, but at other developments it's different languages. And then just continue to communicate actively with our partners at DOL, AAB, and the Disabilities Commission, and continue to improve internal operational maintenance and customer service systems under our new leadership. So that's a bit of an update both for you, councilors, and for, like I said, I know there's a bunch of residents here, and we really want everyone to know that this is a very high priority for us. Councillor Durkin alluded to the federal context. I think it's going to be very challenging. I think that, unfortunately, we don't necessarily think that there is a great funding prognosis for public housing on the federal side coming in 2025. I would be delighted to be proved wrong, but that's kind of our expectation. But I think it makes it all the more important that the city and state partners, like that we all step up and align and figure out how to, move the needle, because we know that our residents can't wait for reliable elevator service. So we're not gonna, waiting sometimes for the federal government is like waiting till kingdom come. But it is something where we need the resources in order to do that work. So thank you so much, Madam Chair, and I'll pass it off to Commissioner McCosh.
Thank you, Administrator Bach, for a very comprehensive report of where we're at. We will obviously follow up with more questions. Commissioner McCosh, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, councillors, for inviting me to testify at this hearing. I do want to introduce to my right my Chief of Staff, Andrea Patton. I asked her to sit with us because she's been involved in this case in particular. So as you know, the councillors know very well that I am the city's disability commissioner, but also the ADA Title II coordinator. And I'll just talk a little bit about that for the audience members and people watching at home. So as a disability commissioner, we run a department in City Hall, we do information referral, we run the accessible parking program, and we're responsive to residents' questions for information and referral. As the ADA Title II coordinator, we are responsible for ensuring everything that the city does, policies, programs, all the facilities that they own and operate, buildings, parks, streets, sidewalks, are in compliance with federal accessibility laws, and we also are beholden to state accessibility laws under the Architectural Access Board. So as Administrator Bach referenced, we are sort of an internal consultant to all city departments. We have 9 staff, so we can't directly do the work like BHA doing buildings and things like that, but we sit with them, we talk with them, and we give them guidance on how to not only make the buildings accessible and inclusive, but also policies, programs, messaging, as Administrator Bach alluded to. So we do have a strong partnership with BHA. We've worked closely with Administrator Bach and her staff who are here. They do incredible work. However, we're not involved in the daily operations. BHA is a quasi-agency, so we're really just here to support them. But we have worked on specific issues with this case, like reasonable accommodations. Administrator Bach referenced that there's not a lot of space to move people in BHA, but I know that they've moved people to hotels and things like that. And our big push for BHA was more communication with the residents, which I know the administrator mentioned, and we'll work with them moving forward, because messaging is very important. For those who may not be able to see, I use a power wheelchair, so I really understand the importance of elevators. And when they're down, how that impacts not only your, day-to-day life, but it could have long-term impacts as far as missing school, work, medical appointments. So it is a really big deal. And I understand that BHA knows that this is a big deal, and that's why they're being very responsive. So I do want to just make a note, kind of a side note. My office is receiving a lot of complaints about elevators breaking down. So BHA isn't alone. I know the MBTA is struggling with this. We're seeing a lot of buildings that are like mid-20th century, mid-rise buildings, like 7 or 8 floors, not owned by a big conglomeration or a public entity, but they can't get parts. As the administrator said, every elevator is almost bespoke because they're smaller footprint, they were built before regulations, they don't have millions of dollars to pay for them, so it's definitely a common issue, and I'm really glad to see how responsive BHA is being, and I think they have a really good plan moving forward. Just a little bit more about my office. We do have an architectural access team. My director of architectural access is here, Patricia Mendez, and they review all building developments for large projects in the city, and they always push for redundant elevators. That was a great point that Administrator Bach made, because one elevator can certainly go down and then people are stuck. So we always push for redundancy, and that is very important, as Councilor Finn mentioned, to think about our aging population. When people get housing, they don't want to move just because they can't do stairs anymore. So let's build all housing we can so that people can age in place. So that's just a little bit more about me. And like I said, Andrea is joining me to talk about specifics of this case. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, or I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Commissioner McCosh. So we'll start with Councillor Flynn for questions. I will set the clock at 6 minutes.
I also want to recognize Dawn Oates, that's at the front table here as well. Dawn has been an advocate in assisting BHA residents, especially at Ruth Barclay and other developments, making sure that their voices are heard and respected. So I want to welcome you as well. I know there's a lot of residents here from various public housing developments, especially in the South End, that also want to testify, want to give talk about their experience about how elevators have impacted them. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you about your testimony. That's what's really important, is hearing directly from you. So let me ask a couple of questions. I don't want to take up too much time. Administrator Bach, can you just give us an idea of, and I've been at Ruth Barclay many times meeting with the residents and hearing their stories about residents, tenants that are stuck in their apartments because the elevator is broken down for weeks. And one woman was saying to me she had to miss a medical appointment because she couldn't get down the stairs. I think it was a physical therapy appointment. Another woman mentioned to me she couldn't get to the pharmacy that she needed her medication. Another woman mentioned that she needed to be somewhere with her family and she couldn't do it. So those were persons with disabilities, impacted them greatly. Give us an idea over the last 4 years, Administrator Bach, just quickly, how frequently are the elevators broken at Ruth Barclay?
Thank you, Councillor. I would say that across, I don't have an exact number for you, but definitely across the 15 elevators at Ruth Barclay, I think, it's very common for us to be experiencing a challenge with at least one of them at any given time. As I mentioned before, there's sort of a distinction between, it's very frustrating when one elevator is down when you have a double cab, but at least then you have a double cab, right? And then I think that there are the buildings, and in particular, I think a lot of the cases that you're talking about have been in cases of the 6-story buildings, the 4 6-story buildings we have there, where there's just one non-redundant elevator, because obviously if that one goes down, there was a major case of this, as you know, as I mentioned, in September, October, and so a number of people experienced the types of things you're describing then, and that was really what prompted us to have more consistent elevator down protocols, and then and then we've had further issues recently. But I think that I think what I want to lift up, what you're alluding to, and I think again it's something that our residents have said and that Dawn has said, is like, you know, there's both the actual outages and there's the challenge of if people feel like it's going to be unreliable, then what, like you're saying, they might be like, oh, I don't want to go do this thing, or I'm nervous about doing this thing because will I be able to get back? And I think that's really a big part of what's driving for us, like with the resources that, thank you guys, that you have helped us get, going towards modernization of these 8 elevators and then the upgrades of these 4 around the 4 corners. Because like that's really what we want to be able to give is like, I think that we've really improved the BHA's ability just recently to be responsive when an elevator goes down, but we know that what everybody wants and what we want is for elevators to go down less frequently, right? And I will say that one of our challenges at this site is that we're in a funny situation where, well, it's not very funny, but the elevators in the tall building cores, the redundant ones, are very old, and so it's great to be getting to modernization on them. Ironically, the ones at the corners are actually some of our newer elevators. They're not brand new, but they're not that old. But they were put in with working with a vendor who has since gone out of business and who, as we've learned, was not that good. So I think like that is and that's very frustrating for us because obviously like in a context where you get so little capital money, you're sort of hoping that everything is going to be useful life at least, right? And so when you don't see that, it's very frustrating.
Thank you. I also was talking to some residents at Ruth Barclay, and one of the residents told me that a firefighter came to her apartment and literally carried her down the stairs so that she could get to her medical appointment. This was an elderly woman. This was a person with disabilities. These are federal laws as well that we have to ensure that we're in compliance with. ADA, as I mentioned, is not something that we can disregard. Americans with Disability Act is the most significant piece of federal legislation, and we just can't have excuses on why elevators are broken. And when elevators are broken and people can't get to their medical appointments, especially persons with disability, to me, that is a significant problem, not just because it's a moral issue, but it's a legal issue too. We're in violation of the Federal Disabilities Act. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just pointing that out, that we need to reevaluate the entire elevator system to ensure that we have state-of-the-art elevators throughout BHA and that every person has equal access to the elevators, especially persons with disabilities and our seniors. I think my time is up. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you. So I'm hearing, and I expected to, because I do believe it, that, you know, this is a priority, but also hearing that there is no money. So how do we address the fact that there's these issues that may never be able to be addressed if we need money to fix the problem?
So I think, I mean, sometimes, well, from the BHA's perspective, the number one solution is money, and that's where, like, honestly, like, I think it's funny in the context of the City of Boston capital budget that you all approve, like $4 million might not seem like that much, but compared to our $30 million total across all of the units grant from the feds, it's like huge, right? And it lets us do things like, okay, we're actually finally going to be able to put a design RFP out and move on modernizing these elevators. So I just want to stress that I do think that money from different levels of government is a piece of the solution here.
Is the capital budget the only way we can get money to BHA?
I mean, it's like, you know, we also got this, Senator Collins put $1 million earmark in the housing bond bill, so that's state capital money. Mm-hmm. We obviously now have to get that authorized at the governor's office level, but those are, you know, a couple of the things. I mean, there is not like I kind of referenced this, but there isn't like there's not a HUD like grant, for instance, that we can apply to. Like there are some things, like there's a set of special money for de-letting, but there's no special money for elevators. So there's nothing like that. I do think, I should say, like, I think that since we've taken a number of steps that I talked through about the presentation, like we've very, very much reduced the sort of like multi-day outages at Ruth Barkley is not something we've been seeing. We see things that are much shorter. Like I said, I think that as our residents and others will tell you, like the fact that it's less than a day is still like making it, access is not where it needs to be. But I want to say that because I think there are things like everything that we can do on this front matters. So I don't want to write any of it off just because I don't have hundreds of millions of dollars to replace all the
And
elevators.
as the former chair of the Opera Committee, could we have used Opera funds for any of this, with these repairs in BHA?
We could have. I think that there was a lot of pressure at the time that the ARPA funds were authorized to focus them on kind of both immediate COVID response things and also the types of things that we couldn't pay for with the capital budget, right? Because there were a lot of like surge expenses that, as you know, are excluded from being the type of thing you can use on capital. So I know there were early conversations about like, how much should this just augment the city's capital budget? And I think mostly that wasn't the route, obviously, that it went. And yeah, I mean, now that I'm at the BHA, I'm like, yeah, I could have given it all to us. That would have been awesome. But I think,
mean, you were here a few weeks ago for the final, what was it, the $3 million?
yes,
To go to other housing issues, but
Yeah.
that could have gone right to repairs at BHA?
I think that that's an example where the city's capital budget could not provide support for first-time home buyers at BHA, right? By law, it can't do that. And so the ARPA money is very unique in being able to do that. And the reality is that $3 million in the capital budget, like to the scale of the now is a $3.5 billion capital budget, seems more achievable.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner McCosh, and you mentioned your role as the ADA Title II. Was that when you stepped in with the English High wheelchair ramp, or was it both being able to be at the table? And thank you for that, for having your voice at those conversations about making sure that the ramp at English High was addressed.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. So as I said, I'm the ADA Title II coordinator for the City of Boston. That being said, there are what we call quasi-agencies, as you well know. BHA is one. Boston Public Schools is also one. Mm-hmm. So again, we'll work with their staff, but we don't really have oversight or responsibility for those access issues.
So you give more guidance?
We give guidance,
legal,
yeah. We try to troubleshoot. We try to solve problems, really, and in the process to make it as ideally accessible as possible. Sometimes it's like switching the entrance, like we looked at English High. Sometimes that's not feasible. But yeah, we're really the internal consultants to do that type of work.
And when your office gets complaints, concerns, calls about violations that are in the city, do you move those forward? Are you legally supposed to then send those to like the state, the federal level?
Yep.
How does that process go? Because I know many calls that are coming in about the elevators here at BHA. Their concern is a violation.
Right. So I meant to mention earlier, our Director of Architectural Access, Patricia Mendez, she has a seat on the State Architectural Access Board. She's currently the vice chair. So AAB is the state agency that's responsible for accessibility in the building code. So if someone calls our office, we can call our internal departments wherever it's relevant, if it's ISD, if it's BHA. We also can refer people to the AAB. They can file a formal complaint there. And then finally, if it's a severe issue and they want to file an ADA grievance against BHA, they can do that through my office. So whatever complaints we get, we definitely move forward, whether it's through the formal complaint process or just trying to work internally with our partners.
Okay, thank you. And I am also looking forward to hearing from the residents, so I am perfect timing.
Perfect timing. Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Durkin has stepped out. I had a few questions. I'll just reset the time for myself. Okay, off we go. So I get the redundant, the importance of having access capacity. As we found out here in this building, we put in a new elevator system for cabs, and then there was a flood, and 2 of the cabs went away for a while, and it took a considerable length of time to get them fixed. I think we're looking at 2.5 years or something crazy. I know it was COVID. Can you give us some insight into what, like, I think, you know, if in terms of supply chain, I know you're not the contractor, you're not the vendor, but like I know that we're sort of improving the supply chain issues, but are we anticipating with maybe increased tariffs on imported goods and things, will that slow the whole thing down again and make it much more expensive? I think we don't have a crystal ball as to know what happens, but how much of our materials do we have to rely on from imports?
Yeah, so it's very concerning, like exactly as you say, Councillor, you know, the delays that came from the COVID dynamics, although they're still present in the system, have started to be reduced. I think that if we actually get into a tariff war, the impacts on us are very unpredictable, because it's, you know, it could be that we're not generally ordering elevator parts from abroad, but the core materials that make them could be coming from abroad. And so that's the type of thing where the BHA doesn't control like kind of that supply chain, but it could very directly affect us. We are already very frustrated by the fact that quite often the elevator parts manufacturers who we're buying parts from, they are across the country, Texas, California, and we're literally sitting waiting for them to make something. And there's this very strange world that I have learned about of like elevators. We often have elevators where the people who made them have gone out of business, and now some other person has taken on the sort of voluntary business of making parts that fit that old business's elevators, except that because they're a new business, they're not accountable to you as like warranties or like having to repair it. And like, so you just chase them and hope that you can get what you need. So it's talk about a world that like I feel like needs a different kind of regulation. Like the elevator manufacturing world is very frustrating right now. I think we're all worried. The tariff thing, the other thing, as you know, is that tariffs create trade wars, and so there can be unpredictable consequences because something else gets caught up in that. So, I mean, on that front, the Housing Authority can't control it, and we just have to keep our fingers crossed. Exactly.
You mentioned the federal portfolio. Like, how many? No, and just to help explain that, this federal portfolio, and is there a state portfolio as well?
Yeah. So the Boston Housing Authority has about 2,000. Thank you so much. About 2,000. State public housing units, and then we're directly operating about 8,000 federal public housing units. We're also passing subsidy through to a bunch of other, so like Orchard Gardens, which was a redevelopment, technically is public housing subsidy that we pass through to our partners. So basically, like when we're talking about, that's why I said, you know, roughly 8,000, it's more on paper, but let's say roughly 8,000 public housing federal units. And so like Ruth Barkley is about 5% of that.
And you say that the annual capital budget for a federal unit is 4,166. Like, in terms of, does that money automatically come from HUD every year? Or how does that work?
It comes from HUD subject to appropriation. So actually, like, it's one of the areas that we're very concerned about. And I think that in many respects, I think it's a very stressful space, because the capital, so HUD gives us money for public housing operations, and then it gives us separate money for public housing capital, and both of those things are funded at the appropriation level by Congress.
At the federal government level in Washington.
Right, but it's not like HUD owes us, from their perspective, a certain amount. Like, if they don't have it, they don't have it.
Yeah.
Right.
But like, when we don't have it, we don't have it.
We don't have it, indeed. No, we feel like they do owe it to us, because we feel that, you know, this is a federal housing program and it ought to be appropriately resourced, right? Like, but
can't just walk away from it.
Yeah. So, but in fact, over many decades, that has been the trend in the federal government.
I know this, it's sort of everything touches this. So you say there's about $1.5 billion of deferred maintenance and that's sort of accumulated over many years, because we know that starting in the 1980s, the federal government wasn't really funding to the appropriate level public housing. So you get some money from the federal, and we get some money from the city. How much? Again, back to the question of money. Like, how much can we expect to get from the state? And do they have any sort of response? If it's a federally funded project, do they support the state piece, or I'm trying to figure out where the money comes from?
No, so unfortunately, the state, does give us capital funds, but only for the state public housing, and so that's like its own set of funding for its own. And to be clear, the thing is that historically, over the last couple of decades, the state public housing funding has been even lower than the federal. So it was a big deal with the Affordable Homes Act to bump it back up. Mm-hmm. But that's going to mean increased capital funding closer to parity with the federal, which still, isn't enough for developments like West Broadway, which Councillor Murphy referenced, which is a state development. But the only state development we have with an elevator is Monsignor Powers, which is in Councillor Flynn's district.
And we have Faneuil Gardens in our neighbourhood, but it's
no elevators.
It's a walk-up, a four-storey walk-up. So, thank you, Commissioner Bach. No, sorry, Director.
It's fine. I'm happy to be a commissioner.
Thank you, Councillor Durkin. You have the floor.
Thank you so much.
6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chair. And I'm just curious on particularly the elevator contracts. Is there any experts that are reviewing those contracts within the BHA, and do you have, who's reviewing those contracts that are signed?
So part of, so we have a capital construction department at BHA and also a procurement department. And there's quite a lot of expertise they have to have in the various state procurement rules. One of the historical challenges in this space for BHA has been that our elevator contracts of a certain size are sort of classified as construction contracts, and there's a lot of state laws around construction contracts and provisions they have to have. And so if you're an elevator operator and you see this very complicated public construction contract that you could bid on, and then you see this very simple, just do our work and we'll send you a check every 30 days contract on the private side, you're that seems easier, So we're very grateful to the elevator contractors who have historically worked with us despite the added complexity. But one of the things that we're working on right now, and it's one of the things that Joey is working on, is just figuring out within the procurement rules that we live under, how can we simplify things as much as possible and still be checking the boxes legally, but making it easier so that we can be more competitive in terms of getting those contractors. So that's something. And really Councillor Braden knows Joey because he was managing Commonwealth, and he's been a very successful property manager of ours, but we stole him from that role because he'd been very successful in kind of walking this line with other kind of operations related contracts in the past.
And just in general, not specifically on the elevators, is there any way for interdepartmental collaboration? Because I know obviously BPS has its own facilities department, the city of Boston has its own facilities department. Is there anything that any of those departments are particularly good at that you guys are collaborating with them on for any specific, any specific needs?
I don't think we haven't really collaborated with the other ones with large property holdings on the elevator front. I think usually our collaboration has to do with when we have adjacent buildings to each other. So sites like the Tobin that you're familiar, right, where there's kind of opportunities to think about the different pieces of public land and public buildings and how they interact. I will say that I think our elevator needs are also in some ways more acute. And I mean, all elevator needs are acute, but our elevators, people live on them, right? And so the reality is that if you have a school or office building and a room becomes inaccessible because of an elevator, you could move whatever event you were going to have to the ground floor, right? There are ways that you could work around that to improve accessibility temporarily. If somebody's home is inaccessible to them, then that's just it's a very, very urgent condition. And so I think that that's, and I will say, I mean, just to echo what the commissioner said about this being a problem, not just at BHA, one of the interesting things that happened when, there's been a bunch of press coverage of our elevator issues recently, and a number of people who live in other buildings called our line to say, yeah, why haven't you fixed my elevators yet? Because there was kind of a sense of like, oh, I guess this is a BHA problem and it's not working in my building. And one of the things we learned was that it's quite acute across the city, because we heard from all these folks who we didn't know about and who we don't manage their buildings. But yeah, so I would just say, I think that we've had fantastic collaboration from the Disabilities Commission. It's an interesting point, the question of like, what could we do with our fellow departments, but I don't think we've done much on that front.
And thank you so much, Administrator, for that. I know the Fensgate Co-op has reached out to me because they're going to be doing elevator work in January, and they have at least 2 disabled members of their community that will need to live somewhere else for a month. So this is not specific just to BHA, but obviously our most vulnerable and most precious residents live in BHA, and we need to do everything we can to make sure that they have access to where they live and like where they're building a life. So I think on my end, the question about sort of that collaboration is really about, are there resources that the city is spending when like there's, a device that does X, Y, Z and it's down the street, and, like what collaboration is possible? Because I know, as we're talking about the cost of construction and maintenance and all of these things, just figuring out ways for city departments to collaborate, because I know we have very extensive conversations with facilities at BPS, and then we have very extensive conversations with our facilities department here at the city, and just that's just my note of like, I wonder if there could be some sort of master inventory of like things that, of ways that collaboration could actually cut cost.
Yeah, I can talk about that a little bit. Like Administrator Buck said, we collaborate all the time very closely. We also work with ISD, public facilities, property management. It is a little bit difficult when you talk about jurisdiction. Everything in Boston has to do with jurisdiction. And there are many different like laws that we have to follow and things like that. I'm going to pass it to my Chief of Staff just to clarify some things on that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, so there's a couple of different legal authorities that apply here. As Commissioner mentioned, we are the ADA Title II coordinator. The ADA doesn't actually cover housing, technically. It covers employment, city services, and places of public accommodation. So where our involvement is with BHA is because it's a public authority and subject to Title II. And so Title II would cover, broadly speaking, programmatic accommodations, the elevator down protocols, explaining to residents what their rights are, things like that, making those accommodations. The other 2 pieces that would cover more specific rights in housing and the specific structure of the elevator would be the state Architectural Access Code, which is part of the building code, which does explicitly require that people maintain access to access features and have a plan in place to maintain accessible routes. And then the Fair Housing Act. The Fair Housing Act lays out a lot more of the specific, as a tenant, here are your rights if your elevator is down, and here is what you can expect from your housing provider. So that's where we've really stepped in to help with the programmatic piece with BHA, to help advocate for better communication with the tenants. You don't know what your rights are and what you can request of your landlord if no one tells you, so making sure we get that information in the hands of tenants and that they have a plan to actually meet those requirements.
Thank you so much.
Can I just add one other quick thing? Like you talked about public facilities at the different agencies of the city of Boston. I think they're all struggling. Like when you think of even City Hall, like the escalators are not able to be repaired because they don't make parts anymore. So I think public facilities in the schools, housing, and even City Hall are all struggling with these issues.
Thank you, Councillor Durkin. A second round of questions. Councillor Flynn, do you have any questions for the panel?
Madam Chair, I don't have any questions. I'd probably like to get to the next panel and listen to the residents.
I think we'll start with some. Anyone else have questions for the panel? I think we'll move to take some of folks for public testimony, and then we'll have our Dawn, you would speak after. So we'll sort of split it into the public testimony. Do we have anyone online for public testimony? Do you want to try and take that one first? How are you all doing up there? Do you want to stretch? So while we're waiting for the virtual testimony, is Bill Henning, Fred Mazziet, Rita Bonsilla? Pardon me if I'm mispronouncing, I'm having difficulty reading this. Linda, yes, and Francis Soto. So you folks could line up, and then we'll take the virtual testimony, and then we'll take you, okay? Who's this?
You can go to either side. Either side.
We could start. Green? Jackson Green, is that, do you hear me?
Shaitan Green.
Shaitan, you have the floor. You've got 2 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. My name is Shaitan Green, agent with the Boston Building Trades Unions. Happy to speak today. The Boston Building Trades Union take great pride in the work we do to support BHA in addressing the maintenance needs of public housing with the goal of making homes safer, ensuring residents are comfortable coming and going from their homes and also feel comfortable in their homes, where HVAC system, pipe systems, roof systems also working properly as well. We deeply value our partnership with BHA leadership and the commitment they show in balancing the complex and often competing needs of residents, all while working with limited resources. Together, we aim to ensure that every family in public housing, as I said, feels safe, comfortable, and has a dignified place to call home. Public housing plays a critical role in providing stability and opportunity for thousands of families, and it takes a collective effort to uphold the mission by collaborating with BHA, residents, and community partners. We can deliver high-quality solutions to improve lives and strengthen neighborhoods. Now more than ever, it is essential to stand united in supporting public housing and the leadership, working tirelessly to sustain it. Federal challenges may threaten these vital programs, but through partnership and shared dedication, we can overcome these obstacles and continue to provide the care and support that residents deserve. Together, we can ensure the future of public housing remains strong and communities continues to serve as the foundation for thriving communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony. Let's see. Bill Henning?
Yes, thank you.
You have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Bill Henning. I'm director of Boston Center for Independent Living. Thank you, councilors, for allowing me to speak. There's so much we could say, but I think it's been said and will be said with emotion and power by the residents of the various projects where there isn't accessibility. I will say BCIL has encountered this with people we serve. I was assisting a woman in Charlestown, not in a BHA property, a couple years ago. I was telling Councilor Flynn when I spoke to her, she couldn't speak. She had just ascended 4 flights of stairs. She had emphysema. I thought she was going to die on the phone, and I'm serious. I was debating to do a 911 wellness check at that moment, but the issue is huge. One thing we've done, you try to assist people individually, and I commit the support of BCIL to any endeavors BHA or the City Council or the administration takes. And we work closely with Commissioner McCosh and her excellent team. But we've also raised the issue at the state. We worked with Representative Consalvo, my representative in the Affordable Homes Act, got a commission put into the act to look at accessibility in housing. And one of the things I've been stating again and again, we're working closely with HLA, is that we have to look at the elevator issue. This is a long-term thing, as Administrator Bach has detailed how complex it is, supply lines, the prospect of tariffs. It's all frightening in a way, and I think we all appreciate that, but we will work. I think it has to be a state, federal, local kind of solution, although that shouldn't stop anybody from looking at the immediate issues people face every day. This is a real public health crisis. It's a fair housing crisis, it's an ADA crisis, it's a public health crisis. When people can't get out, it's bad, and I'm sure everyone will make that clear, but thank you so much for addressing this today.
Thank you for all your work. Fred, you have the floor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. First of all, thank you for the members of the City Council for speaking with us. I would like to thank the members of BHA for being here, and I'd like to thank Dawn. I have several problems. I live at 42 Harrison Archway. Problem number one is that we have 2 elevators. One is not working for the past 2 years. We have individuals who are disabled like myself. We have elderly individuals, and that is a very big problem for us. Second thing I'd like to mention is that in regards of us having ability to receive additional services, I think that 42 Harrison needs to be reclassified as a senior and a disabled unit as opposed to a family unit. A majority of our members are either disabled or elderly in our building. Less than 4 families per floor have a disability or are elderly. Having only 1 elevator is ridiculous. Second thing I'd like to add to that is that I've spoken with our property manager on several occasions about a health and safety issue. With there being a lot of individuals who are disabled and elderly, I asked whether or not EMS, for example, police, fire, safety, and ambulance have an idea of who in the building is disabled or elderly or would need additional help getting out of the building, be there because of an emergency. I was told by the person who runs our property that it's not her problem and that nothing can be done or has been done about it. That's a huge issue. The third thing I'd like to bring up is that whenever we do have a major outage in our building, property management has extended to us the ability to be in a hotel until those individual items are taken care of. Problem. We don't get any assistance in regards of moving items that are necessary to that hotel. We're not given a per diem in case we need to have food, medicine, or anything like that to move to a hotel. How the hell are we going to go to a hotel when we have no clothes, no medication, no computers, nothing? A lot of these people, they can't just put stuff in a suitcase and be off and running.
Thank you.
One final thing, I think 2 minutes is not enough to have this conversation.
Thank you. Yes. Next is Sheila Thompson. Or Rita.
Yes, she is.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I thank you for this meeting. Thank you, Dawn. My name is Sheila Thompson. I live at 14 East Brookline. 1 elevator hasn't worked for a year. They said it had to do with a flood up on the 10th floor. And the other one works when it wants to. You get dressed, you say, I got somewhere to be. You go out and you never know if it's gonna work or not. I'm on the 7th floor. I've had back surgery with metal in my back. It's very painful to walk, but I'm up. I thank God every day to be up and walking. But it's something else when you gotta walk up and down flights of stairs. Okay? I have to do it to get to my medical appointments, physical therapy, or even helping out my family members, because I do babysit. And when I do that, go up and down the stairs, I have to be in the house for 2 or 3 days just to recover. This is a hazard, and it needs to be taken care of. I love the South End. I don't want to leave the South End. I've been here since I was 11 years old, and I just pride in where we are. I love my neighbors. I love to be around this area of the South End, and I don't want to move. But if something's not taken care of, my family says, you got to leave, Sheila, because you're not doing well. And they worry about me. I'm in my 60s, and I want to continue on to my 90s, but I can't do that if I'm always in pain and in bed. All right? And I thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? Rita? And Linda and Francia? I'm just calling you down in three so we can keep everybody moving. That's great.
Hi, my name is Lisa Smith, and I live at 23 Monsignor Reynolds Way. I'm right across from the office at Ruth Barkley. And my biggest problem is I have been told that they would like to move me up higher. I live on the 3rd floor. I am not going higher. I just learned how to walk down these stairs and get up on the stairs. I have arthritis in my spine, and it's a miracle that I'm walking, but I can do it. I can't do it too long because I will fall. All I'm saying is we need these elevators. I don't know what the problem is, but we have to figure out how to keep them going. And that's it.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Linda next. Linda and Francia? Francia?
Well, it still ain't noontime yet, but my name is Linda House. I'm from Ruth Barkley Development, 42. I'm volunteer for the task force. I've been there 40 years. And this is the worstest thing I ever seen happen in this development, the elevator, which we need so bad. I had an accident with the elevator. After I kept trying so hard to tell somebody's gonna get hurt, I ended up getting hurt. September the 12th, the elevator came down real hard, boom, and threw me against the wall. I grabbed hold to the rod, and I sprung my arm and hand, and so I've been up under medical care for that. But that ain't the point. The point is that we need the elevator fixed. It's very sad that our elderly people, some of them have very bad overactive bladder. And they have called me and said, Miss Linda, the elevator is so slow, I couldn't make it upstairs. Most of the elderly people in that building, we got 13th floor, lives from the 8th floor on up. And I asked Ms. Patterson to let me have a key to downstairs where the security booth's at. For people, when the elevator go down, that I will come down the stairway, I'm on the 8th floor, and let them go into the bathroom. Because it's so slow, they're using the bathroom on themselves. And that is not right. That's embarrassing. And we got a lot of people with asthma, anxiety. When they get in the elevator, they're so nervous they don't know if they're going to stop. Their heart beating and racing. That's not good. Most of that development have elderly people. Ms. Patterson called me one time. She said, Miss House, did that used to be a senior building? Development? I said, the whole development? She said, yes, because most of the people in here are senior. I said, no. But we shouldn't have to live like this. We loved it. We shouldn't have to go through this. One lady, most of all, this is very bad. I get emotional about this because my mother is battling cancer. She's on the 8th floor. The elevator was down, and we could not get her to her appointment for her chemo. First of all, you battling cancer, that's a battling fight. And so to be able to miss your appointment, that's not good. So we asking you, please. We don't care about the windows, the money to get the window fixed. Elevator, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Francia and Lisa, and then we'll go to our second panel. Come on down. Just say who you are, and you've got 2 minutes.
I got it. Okay. My name is Rita Bonella. I live in 42 Harrison Archway. The question is for housing specifically, because the elevator having more than 1 year is not past the inspection. Who's inspecting the elevators and is still in service? This is the important thing. And the second thing it is why housing is spending money and the thing is not priority for a special pay landscaping, for cleaning to the areas outside, pay for cleaning the building. Why is not saving that money and putting in the elevator, fix it? That one is the important thing, the elevator for everyone. That's it.
Very good, thank you. I hope we've gotten everybody so far. So we'll take a break from the public testimony. We can come back and do more. Don, you have the floor. And I'm going to give you 15 minutes if you need it, but that's...
I was just going to ask, if I may,
Yeah.
would it be possible for some of the folks that have come here to speak before me so that...
No, I've already let about 8 or 9 folks speak,
Yeah,
and then
okay.
we'll come back to them after you.
Okay.
That's okay?
I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
I think their voices are more
Yeah,
important
of
than
course.
mine, but...
Well, you know, take what you need in terms of time, and then we go back.
Okay.
Back to the constituents.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Counselor. Thank you for everyone who's here and for this time. We really appreciate it. My name is Dawn Oates. I founded an organization about 10 years ago called the Play Brigade. We've since expanded beyond just play, recreation, and sports to include equity in housing, healthcare, and education. So I'm here on behalf of these really courageous residents of Ruth Barclay Apartments to speak today about the situation. I first started going to Ruth Barclay in 2015 when one of my friends and dance partners in a charity competition, he lived in the building and still does. Over the years, we became close friends. I would visit more and more, and my own personal experience in the elevators was that they were extremely unreliable, and it became concerning not just for the residents living there, but for people who were visiting, delivering packages. They could not get up the stairs. There was theft of packages, theft of medications, medical supplies, etc. About July of 2023, I believe it was, I noticed that there was a period of time that was longer than comfortable for people to be stuck in their homes. Prior to that, I had been watching, and collecting information, collecting data, developing relationships, speaking to residents. I've spoken to almost every single person that's here today from the building. I know hundreds of residents who live at Ruth Barclay in all of the buildings. I walk around there, I feel comfortable, they know who I am and they know why I'm there. They've shared their stories with me. You're going to hear a lot more. It was upsetting to me that I felt powerless to be able to do anything. And so what we did was we created a community organizing campaign. And I said, okay, we're going to get this elevator fixed. And we started with 19 Monsignor Reynolds Way. I quickly learned that that building was the 5th in line, the 5th worst elevator. Lots of conversations with the management office, lots of studying how the work order line works, who's answering the phones, how residents are treated, whether they're hung up on, the delay between reporting it and the timing of the elevator company being called, and then the response time, and whether it's being communicated that these are residents with disabilities who need to get out of the building or to get into the building. I know a resident who missed the Super Bowl and was outside in the snow for 9 hours waiting for the elevator to be fixed. I know people who have had to go to Whole Foods to use the bathroom or urinate in Gatorade bottles. I know residents who have slept in the hallways overnight because they couldn't get up to their building because overtime wasn't approved by the BHA. I want to make clear that this is not an adversarial position I'm taking. I have had great communication with Administrator Bach on these issues, and we share a common desire to fix the problem. The problem is there isn't money to fix it. So I'm here specifically with an appeal for us to knuckle down and figure out how we're going to get this fixed, because I also share, Councillor Flynn, you said this is not an option. This is a priority, and this is an urgent crisis. And Bill Hennig, thank you for coming today also. It's a crisis. When we are spending money on other things that were very important, if everything is a priority, then nothing's a priority. And I would say that in this situation, if you look into the gallery today, every single person is here risking speaking up for fear that retaliation will come to them. Now, I've assured everybody that that is not the case here today, that we are all on the same page and we want to move forward with this. I want to speak to a couple of points here. Statistically, when I started looking around, when I started watching 19 Monsignor, I started realizing that there were other elevators that were issues. The quick history of what has happened is I watched, I collected data, I developed relationships. Then I asked for a modernization. I filed an Architectural Access Board complaint. We went to hearing, and I was told that, and in learning about the situation, I was told that these elevators are 30 years old, some 30 plus years old, and that the elevator company that supplied the parts went out of business during the pandemic, and they're a German company, and that parts can't be found, that they need to be fabricated, and that the BHA was looking for a West Coast company, or looking at a West Coast company to be able to make these parts piecemeal. I did meet with Administrator Bach and Councilor Flynn with some of the residents last summer, I believe it was, or a year ago. We had a hearing with the Access Board. I started getting tips from outsiders telling me to take a look at these redundant elevators, and that when these elevators went down, they were not fixed and they were left down. We know that parts are scarce. We know that there are many elevator contractors in the area, but only a couple who contract with the BHA. I was told some things that I can't confirm, but only Administrator Bach would be able to look into, like why do bidders not want to bid on these elevators? Why do they not want to work? I heard whisperings and rumors that I cannot verify right now that the BHA is not good at paying those bills, and so that may be a problem with making people not want to bid, and even the contracts that they have are month to month, so there may be a trust issue. And I've learned this because I know a lot of people in the elevator industry, because I have 9 years of property management experience in my early career. And it is a relationship game. If you're going to use scarce resources and technicians who are trained on these old, outdated elevators, you're going to encounter that it's going to cost you more, and there can be fewer people who are going to be knowledgeable about fixing them. So with all of this information and feeling like we were getting nowhere, we launched a media campaign that I'm sure everyone in this room is probably aware of. It resulted in more than 40 media hits from major media, Boston local media, and also even People magazine. So people everywhere know about the elevator crisis. That spiked reports to the Architectural Access Board, and that led to hearing number 2. I was pleased to see that at hearing number 2 of the Access Board, that the Boston Housing Authority had looked not just at 19 Monsignor Reynolds Way, but also at all of the other elevators. I had since filed 7 other reports on 7 other elevators on the property. I then sat down with Administrator Bach. We talked about what do we do, and we're here today to appeal to you and to hear the residents' voices. There's a couple of issues that I want to mention. One is we need more city resources, possibly state resources. You heard Administrator Bach talk about federal resources. The city capital budget, I know from 2 years ago, attending a capital meeting, that things are budgeted and not always spent. And I know things come up, repairs come up, and that money chews into the modernization money. We have the $4 million. I heard about the $1 million bond bill. That hasn't been released. I would question why. Who has the authorization? When can that be signed? We expect increase in prices. We expect that these elevators, especially in big jobs like this, more and more, you know, the old open a wall and find you need 3 times the budget that you needed. These are old elevators. I would question, what is the modernization? What is going into these contracts? What is the bid proposal? What are we asking for? Commissioner Flynn, you said that you would like to see state-of-the-art elevators. I don't see that that's possible with this meager budget, because elevators are typically can be $100,000 a story. And how many do we need? Quite a few. So are we looking at modernizing what? Is it controllers? Is it traveling cables? Is it, what is it? Is it all the switches? We have to really think about, when we go out to bid, what are we asking for? Can we afford it? Are we asking for what we actually need, or are we cheapening the project so we can get away with it for a slim budget? Because I want to remind everybody here, Ruth Barkley herself talked about this and championed for new elevators back in the 80s. And here we are again, the Ruth Barkley Apartments, looking for money for elevators, working on those same elevators that were put in way back then and that have been bit by bit rebuilt, part by part, piece by piece. So when I first went to the Architectural Access Board hearing, I said, I'm looking for an outside contractor, an elevator consultant to review all of these elevators, not the BHA, but an outside independent elevator consultant to look at each elevator and discuss what does it really take to get these elevators up and running and compliant with state and federal codes. And that didn't happen, so I'm appealing to this council for an independent elevator contractor to make that assessment. What is it really going to cost? What is the baseline modernization? Is replacement appropriate in some situations? Because what it boils down to is it doesn't matter if we have signed contracts, if we have a lack of bidders, but there's maybe 2 or 3 people who know how to fix these elevators and do the plans, then we're going to be hogtied for years trying to get 8 different elevators repaired. We couldn't even get 42 Harrison Archways done in a 6-month period. I was told March 3rd. And that's a long time for people to be walking up and down stairs. It's a long time to have safety hazards every day. I'm concerned with the lack of technicians. I'm concerned for parts and availability if we're going to rely on just a modernization. I don't know where these parts are coming from. I've yet to be able to find a name of a parts contractor in California or Texas. No one has given me that information. If those pieces and parts are being put together piecemeal as these elevators break down, there's no difference in the resident experience than what they're experiencing now. It breaks down, we wait for parts, we get new parts, we bring it back up to speed. I want to speak for a minute about what happens when the elevators go down. People will stay in for reasons already explained, or people will be stuck out. It is a complete stripping away of dignity if you cannot walk up the stairs to ask for somebody to carry you up the stairs, to have to wet your pants, to have to have a medical emergency in the lobby in front of everybody while you're waiting in line on Thanksgiving Day to get back up to your apartment for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, because only so many people can fit on the elevator. When the elevators go down and people have to be moved to hotels, some choose to stay. That is a huge mental health toll that has a tremendous impact. If you go back and you Google this and you look at the Globe article and the GBH reporting on this, you will see it is excruciating to be trapped in your home and to be looking out the window like you're in prison. So while it is an offer, these are people who do not want somebody picking out their tomatoes. These are people who do not want somebody to know what prescriptions they have. So the offer of let me go get your groceries and let me go get your prescriptions works for some, but not all. These are people who have medical equipment that can't possibly carry it all down the stairs set up in a hotel, and certainly can't be fed on $25 a day for a per diem. I want to make sure that if we're looking at these elevators, we think about it like we think about computers. If you have an old Apple IIe computer from 1991 and we're going to modernize it, in some ways that's really silly. We're going to put brand new stuff into an old technology, and that's what we're talking about doing. So what I would like to see this council consider, and with everyone here and all the panelists, is what does it really take? What is an ideal situation that's sustainable, that minimizes impact and maximizes accessibility and safety for the residents? Architectural Access Board codes are currently in violation still since last year's report. Accessibility features need to be in good working order at all times. And while we can reasonably expect that these old properties, these old elevators will break down from time to time, it's not acceptable to say that a lack of funding is a good excuse to violate civil rights. This is a BIPOC community, elderly and disabled people disproportionately affected by this. We're not going into apartment buildings in other parts of the city and seeing, oh, it's broken down, we'll just leave it that way. Everyone in this room cares about the people here and the people who live in the complex. We have to come up with a way to get the appropriate funding, not just to put a Band-Aid on this so that a few months from now it'll break down again and again and again because we're doing piecemeal repairing and parts. We're looking at violations of state and federal law. You've mentioned fair housing, ADA. Every single day, these are violations, and people just have to put up with it. We have a housing insecure population here. If they speak up, and I credit everyone who's come today, if they speak up, there is fear, there's risk that it will get worse. Many people don't speak up. So I would dare say that I probably am a lot more familiar with what's happening inside this development in particular than even the BHA is at times. And so I'm going to continue having these conversations. I want to extend an offer to sit with you and share what I get for resident feedback. I would love to be involved in a plan or get residents to be involved in a plan in the discussions and the planning moving forward if there's an opportunity to do that. There's a saying in the disability community, nothing about us without us. And so I believe that the people that are sitting here today can provide a lot of really good path forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councillor Flynn. I'll just pause. Have you any questions for Dawn at the moment? Yeah, we'll start with the lead sponsor and then we'll come back round and then we'll go back there. Thank you. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dawn, for your testimony, but more importantly for your advocacy, for your leadership, trying to ensure everybody is treated with respect, especially persons with disabilities. My question, Dawn, have you documented all of the information you're talking about that you discussed? And these aren't just stories that you heard. Have you documented all of this?
So that's an excellent question. I have documented stories and my own personal experience with the elevators. I have a log going back probably 3 years, an incomplete log because I don't know every single time the elevator breaks down, but I have many, many, many notes that are my personal experience, first teaching residents what to do when the elevator breaks down. I'm not the person that's going to make every single phone call, but there was a big push to, hey, call the work order line. Here's the number. This is what you say. Get the work order number, etc. So yeah, I do have a lot of notes on this going back at least 3 years.
Thank you. You mentioned, and I've been a colleague with Councillor Bach for many years, and you mentioned the word fear and retaliation. I don't think Councillor Bach would accept that at the BHA. I've known her for many years. I don't think she is that person.
That's right. She has provided reassurance, and I have in turn explained that to the residents.
Thank you. Councillor Bach, do you want to, Administrator Bach, do you want to respond? I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Flynn, and I appreciate those comments. And Dawn's, I do just want to really stress on the record that the BHA is proud to have our residents here. And honestly, I feel like a lot of the federal funding issues that we've discussed today are because people don't hear the voices of public housing residents enough. And so it's been too easy over so many years for people to just cut the money for what we need and what our residents deserve. So I just really want to stress that we're extremely glad that the Boston Housing Authority, Ruth Barkley residents are here, that they're speaking up. We know that that's the only way that we actually get what we need. And absolutely, the BHA is super committed to not retaliating and also to, making sure that we follow up on things. I mean, there are a couple of things that people mentioned that are sort of live ongoing situations, and I've already asked the staff to make sure that they get the notes on that so that that's something that we can chase down. I mean, it's very important to us. We literally go to work every day in order to serve our residents. Without our residents, the BHA doesn't have a point, right?
Well, thank you, Administrator Bach, and it's also my responsibility to continue to work with the residents and to ensure that their voices are always heard and respected. I was talking to some of the residents earlier. Actually, I talked to all of the residents earlier before the meeting started. my plan is to meet with you again, maybe sometime mid-December for a lunch over at the location. Sometimes we go to the Cathedral Church for lunch, and we can follow up on some of these issues. Dawn, talking to the residents, and I highlighted, one of the residents told me this today, but she also told me this recently, that at one point a firefighter had to pick her up and carry her down the stairs so that this woman could go to a medical appointment that she needed to go to. Have you also heard that from other residents as well?
Yes, I have, Counselor. Many residents miss medical appointments. They miss personal appointments. And I would say that while we're hearing about school and work and medical appointments, what we don't hear spoken about in forums like this are just oh, I missed a concert. I missed my nephew's graduation. These are personal things that we don't just live to eat and work and go to the doctor. We live for joy, and that's what's missing when these elevators go down.
Thank you. I think my time is up. I will just also say, in Administrator Bach, a lot of these issues happened before you arrived here, so I don't think people are I'm not blaming you. It's not about blaming anybody. I think it's about working together. These are issues that have been ongoing, as one of the residents said, probably since the mid to late 80s into the 90s. So it's not you personally, but I do respect that you're here, Administrator Bach. My time is up. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Murphy?
Thank you. Thank you, Dawn, for your, I would consider, powerful testimony. The BHA community is lucky to have you. We are lucky to have you here in the city to uplift the voices, because I do also agree, Director Bach, that you in no way would ever retaliate, and understand that it's, people do need to come forward. But I guess my direct question to you is, have you sat down at, the manager level at each, housing development to make sure that there's not any pushback at that level? Because I hear that about elevator issues, but about a lot of issues across the BHA portfolio, that it's obviously never going to come from you, but are we making sure that, in the day-to-day interactions, that it's not coming at that level either?
Yeah, and I think that is something that we discuss with the team. I think also that what happens, for instance, in the case of Ruth Barkley and the elevator challenges right now, there's a lot of senior staff, I named some of them, who are also paying a lot of attention to this. And so I think the message is very clear, like up and down the line, that, if folks have challenges, we're trying to solve those. Mm-hmm. And also I would say, just, I think that we have to have that recursive feedback so we know what's not working for people, right? I think even the point that was made today about, okay, well, if I do take up the hotel room, is there some way for us to be helping with the moving of vital items? I think that's a thing that I'm going to take back and talk to the team about. So we're not going to get the insight without hearing from our residents directly. So so just really want to stress that.
Thank you. And you brought up also, Dawn, the priority. And I said this in my first round of questioning. If it's a priority, but everything's a priority and there's no money, then it obviously then needs to have a political will. So this is a good start. So I appreciate you talking about, keeping this going. But probably more than anyone in any department in the city, that if there isn't a political will, and we've seen things that I would consider way less need or priority getting a lot of funding because there is allowed. So how do we continue to uplift the voices of communities that have often felt and continue to feel that their voices aren't being heard? So what kind of commitment can we get to know that we're going to keep it? Because we were just at a community meeting in Alston Brighton, and a frustration, that there isn't a BCYF community center for years. So there's always going to be lots of things we're advocating for. But how do we make sure that these elevators, and like you said, they're not just repaired, maybe replaced, and how much money is it? And then maybe it is a good look, because the ARPA money's gone, but we were spending hundreds of millions of dollars on things that felt good, while we saw that this issue, which is really harming the quality of life for so many of our vulnerable residents never even got addressed, or it was never even an option to use money like that for these necessary repairs.
So thank you, Councillor. I mean, I think we're, as Don said it, as we, the BHA, are saying, we're definitely looking for the council to be partners in that political will. I will say that, the city has, and I think it's happened over the time that you and Councillor Flynn have both been councillors, Councillor Braden, Councillor Durkin, we have gone from a place where the city used to not support the Boston Housing Authority from a capital budget perspective at all, to a world where there is significant capital spending in support of us. And some of that capital spending, even though the $4 million for the elevators at Ruth Barkley that was approved in June is the first time there's been specific elevator spending. An example would be some of that city money is helping us with the huge renovation project at St. Botolph that Councillor Flynn mentioned earlier. And that is going to include, their elevators really being state of the art. So I do think there is city money that has been going into this through the capital budget, and I'm super grateful. And I am, as you said, more aware than most people that is going to involve your all's continued advocacy. So I definitely want to express our hope and desire for that. And I would just say this is partly also an address to one of Don's points, is that the design RFP that we've put out is for a third-party engineering company to assess what these 8 elevators need. So it is not going to be a case of the BHA eyeballing. And that's something where, once we get that done, we're very happy to share it. And I think that it might help us to, obviously my hope is that it turns out that the project for those 8 elevators to get exactly what we need equals the resources that we currently have. But I think the good thing is we're going to have that objective third-party assessment. So if what comes up is, hey, to really get the great situation, we need a little bit more money, that's going to put us in a position to come and ask you guys and ask others and sort of size that ask appropriately. And I will just say that from the BHA perspective, we know how, you just referenced the case of, things that got updated in the 1980s. We know at BHA that often we have to wait a long time for the next time that there's a real investment somewhere. So we are also very invested in how do we get the best version of something in the moment that we do it. It's always just a question of, obviously I can't authorize a project out of an account that doesn't have enough money to pay for it. But I think we're very aligned in hoping for that as well.
Thank you. And I will just end, you mentioned that quote in the disability community, but I was thinking as you were speaking about that, you get what you get and you don't get upset. And I feel like that's definitely how many residents are told, and that feeling oh, you have no right to be upset. You should be happy with what you have. And we know, not just on federal violations or others, it's human, decency that we're not giving our residents what they deserve.
That's exactly right. And when we look at what's happening right now, while I understand Administrator Bach is in a tough situation as leadership for the whole BHA and all properties, I just want to really call to the front that this is a civil rights issue. And while we're talking about money, a lack of funding is not and has never been an excuse to not have civil rights. And so the legal basis for this is something that we haven't touched on, but if you look into the New York City Housing Authority legal case, it's elevators and a whole lot more, and it resulted in, I think, about $1.2 billion being infused into New York City Housing Authority. When you look at what I've been doing, I'm stopped here at the table and offering to collaborate and partner. But beyond this, if we can't get anywhere in a reasonable time frame, and when I say reasonable, that's subjective, right? Reasonable for these folks to not be able to get into their homes today or out of their homes today. Like I said, it's subjective. There are other steps that we could take as part of a community organizing campaign, and that is not where we want to go right now. But others who have come before us have filed complaints with HUD, housing discrimination complaints, fair housing complaints at the local level, ADA complaints with the DOJ, engaged local media and politicians, which we have already done on the front side of this, but then also escalating the issue to HUD's Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity, pursuing legal action. I don't think any of us are in a place to want to do any of those things. I think I come to the table with the hope that we can find money and get it done, and get it done correctly, and get it done within a time frame that is reasonable, not to us as administrators, but reasonable to the people who this is their everyday existence, and it has been for several years.
Thank you, Dawn. I'd like to move on. That was Councillor Murphy's question. Do you mind? I'll move on to my colleague, Councillor Durkin. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much, Councillor Braden, and thank you so much, Dawn, for being here. I appreciate your advocacy. As someone who was very involved in disability rights when I was at Smith College, I was very involved in, snow plowing and all of these things when I was in college. This is very much hearkening back to this need for dignity and not needing to ask for anything. And there was a building in my district where the access door was broken, and it just felt very undignified to have to ask every single time for this door to be opened. And this is just making me think back to some of the conversations I've had that have really moved me to a point of, disability rights and access being a core priority of mine. So I appreciate you really, in your testimony, really personalized this of those moments of having to miss things, those moments of soiling yourself, those moments of, so I appreciate that, and also very much appreciate the city's predicament that we're in with not being able to sort of find the resources immediately to get this done, and also just seeing elevators throughout my district being unable to fix even in private homes and in private residences. So I just want to say, I think a lot of times at the city council, we have these hearings and only the councilors that are in that district show up to that hearing. And the reason I came is because elevators has been such an important thing that that's been happening throughout my district as well. And also, as we vote on capital budgets and other things, we need to be aware of the issues that are really important to residents. I did have the opportunity as I was walking in to speak with a resident of the Ruth Barkley Apartments, and he shared that he was scared to be here too. And I think when you're given something that not everyone has access to, like public housing, even if everyone's telling you that there will be no retaliation, there's a personal feeling of I'm really stepping out here beyond my own, but beyond what I'm normally asked to do in my daily life. So I just want to say thank you to the residents for being here. I really appreciate your testimony. And I just, on a final note, just want to say, we are all charged with caring for public housing residents, no matter what district you live in and what district you represent. And I do believe in Administrator Bach's leadership and her commitment. And I'm really excited for this to be a priority, and excited for us to move together as a council to try to figure this out. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Durkin. So I had a quick few things. Just the question about capital management, and you were the chair of Ways and Means, so you're familiar with this. And just thinking, we put our capital budget together and we put items on the capital budget that, sometimes the money doesn't always, depending, because priorities shift and we have to move money out to address emergencies in places. I know that the the capital money, our opportunities at the time of the budget is to allocate more funds or less funds or whatever to BHA. In terms of how that sort of interaction between the City of Boston and BHA, which is a quasi-independent, quasi-public organisation, like how does that work? Like, what sort of leeway do we have to actually put more money into the BHA budget?
Thank you, Councillor. So we do discuss the capital budget closely with the city, especially in these recent years where the city has been giving us financial support through the capital budget, which, like I said, wasn't happening before 2019. And so one of the things that we'll do is not just talk about those top line numbers, but also talk about, like, in what year do we think that the BHA would actually be spending the funds? Because as you know, like, we're very aware that there are some capital budget items that have a tendency to kind of like creep, right? And we want to make sure that we actually are able to spend that money ASAP. So the BHA, we're very clear with the city partners about, like, yeah, this is when we think we could actually get this thing into construction. So we want to make sure that there's no surprises and that nobody tells us, oh, we didn't think you were going to actually manage to make that project happen like this year. So it is a bilateral conversation we have. I will say that I think that one of the advantages that we have in that dynamic is that we can just commission the design study. Like on the city department side, if the city priorities have shifted and there's a desire to wait a little bit, then like the design study might not get authorized, which is of course a gating function to funding the project. And so for us, I mean, we're obviously looking to take advantage of those city resources ASAP, and so that's why, like, for us, being able to just commission the design study and get that answer on what's the top line number, to do all the things that we want to do and come back to you guys with that is, I think, very helpful.
Very good, thank you. I will, as we said, it's so important, and thank you all for being here, all the BHA residents for coming in today. I would like to continue with your testimony, and as we want to reassure you that we have Administrator Bach. In no way would there be retaliation. You are just being very, very important role as advocates for your community here. So thank you all for being here today. And with that said, is Lisa Smith Luz Vilande Levanda? Pardon my.
Lisa has already spoken.
Okay, very good. I wasn't marking that up. Tony Stratton, David Francois, Joe Pierre, Lee Lewis, and Kim Munity. Okay, whoever wants to speak, come up. Just introduce yourselves. You've got 2 minutes, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you. Oh, yes, and Councillor Flynn has a quick announcement. Just Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me an opportunity to make a quick announcement. After this hearing, wanted to invite you to the Curly Room for pizza and water if you'd like to join us. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. So who's next?
Madam Chair, I would ask permission for this woman, Denise, to speak next.
Yes,
please.
Go ahead.
Thanks.
Just introduce yourself and say who you are.
My name is Denise Campbell. I'm 62 years old. I was stuck in the elevator for a whole hour with no way to get in touch with the police, the firemen. When they came and opened the door, I was on the floor. I got recorded coming out the elevator crying profusely, sweating. It doesn't make any sense. I have COPD with emphysema. So after that incident, I've been to the hospital 7 times because of my breathing, because they have no ventilation in the elevator. So something has to be done, because if not, somebody's gonna die in the elevator. A friend of mine, if he didn't, I was banging on the door. Nobody heard what I was saying. So when the guy called the fireman to come get me, I had to wait 30, 45 minutes before they even opened the door. So and they had meetings across the street while I was stuck in the elevator. You think they came and seen what's wrong with me? No. So I had Dawn. She took a video of me coming out the elevator. I was crying. There was fire trucks. I have COPD with emphysema. So he asked me, do we need to call the ambulance to help you? I told him no. I said, I have oxygen upstairs. It doesn't make any sense, you know? Something has to be done. Because like I said, if my neighbor wasn't moving in, I probably would have been dead. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Thank you. Who's next? Come on up.
Hi, Tony Stratton.
Come up and introduce yourself, Tony.
Hello, my name is Tony Stratton. I live at 42 Harrison Archway, and I've been there for more than 10 years. I am a person with disabilities, and I have 2 other children with disabilities as well. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment with 4 people in it, and it's very difficult to move around, to find a place that we can all fit. So that apartment that I live in on the 4th floor is not anything that I want or need for my children. But the elevators, my granddaughter had open heart surgery, and she is very afraid of the elevators. And my grandson is very nervous, and he freaks out every time the elevator jumps. So it's just more than that what we can take. So
thank you.
Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you for your testimony.
大家好。
Hi everyone.
我家住在波士顿29 Monsignor Reno。
I live in 29 Monsignor Way.
我在5楼。
I live on the 5th floor.
我们那一栋房子全是那个残疾人。
Most of the residents that occupy this building have a disability.
在我家发生了4次电梯坏。
At my home, there has been 4 separate incidents where the elevator was out of commission.
有3次就是我的先生困在电梯里，每次都是打911过来把电梯撬开。
There were 3 incidents where my husband were trapped inside the elevator, and each of those incidents we had to call 911 so that they can pry open the door.
最后一次是11月10号。
The last time that occurred was on November 10th.
电梯从11月10号到12号一直没有人来修，我们都打电话，还是没人来修。
The elevator has been broken from October 10th to the 12th. We kept calling for someone to come to fix it, but no one has ever shown up.
12号，我的女儿回国，2个大箱子。
On the 12th, my daughter was going back to China. She had 2 large suitcases.
我们再次打电话，她说我们知道了。
We tried calling again, and the response was, "We know."
还是没人来修。
Still, no one came.
我们最后请人把我们的2个大箱子搬下来。
In the end, we had to hire people.
谢谢。
In the end, we had to hire people to carry down the 2 suitcases.
我希望以后电梯应该尽快的 帮我们修好。
I hope that in the future, when incidents like this occur, that the elevator would be fixed immediately.
谢谢。
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Kimra Manuti. I'm a resident of 16 East Brookline in the Ruth Barkley Apartments. I only moved in March, and since then we've had the elevator out 4 times. So if you want to know how often elevators go out in these, it's quarterly at a minimum. That's one. Number 2, I had to go live in a hotel for a month after just coming out of emergency housing. You can only imagine how that re-traumatized myself and my special needs child. I have a dynamic disability, so today I'm blessed to be able to stand in front of you without my walker and my cane, but that is not always the case. When our elevator went out in September, I had sprained my knee, and I didn't find out about that till I had to go grab an Uber to go to the doctor, and I had to go down 6 flights of stairs with a sprained knee. Now, my ADA accommodations state that I should not be higher than the 2nd floor, but those cannot be accommodated because of the current housing crisis that is not being taken into account in all of the issues that we're having and that we're speaking on. Yes, the elevator issues are a major problem because as you're trying to move people around, you have to find housing for them. And we still have people bursting in the shelters, and they have nowhere to go. And I want to say also that you are asking, how can we feel safer around you? Representation matters. There's no representation of any of the people that are part of our community out here. So you cannot speak on whether or not we feel retaliated upon, because we do. Because the lack of urgency that is being shown by the city of Boston to house us and to maintain our circumstances is abysmal. There is no sense of urgency. And I don't know the director, but this is not a laughing matter, and you've been giggling all morning. People have been harmed in the process of this, and this is not an attack, but it's unreasonable. It's unreasonable for people to be collapsing in elevators. It's unreasonable for you to be out of your home for a month. It's unreasonable to have to cause people to change back and forth to do things. My child struggles with transitions. She struggles with temperatures, and you're causing her to have transitional issues, schooling issues. We can't get our medication on time. When our medication doesn't get to us, we can't go down 6 flights of stairs for it. But there's no remedy for that, right? We get a per diem if you are out, but then it takes 2-3 months for you to get the money back. I'm still waiting back from a per diem. Some people aren't even getting a per diem. So all of these expenses are being put on us, residents who are in low-income housing, because we need help, not problems. So I would suggest that people create a grant to now ask for the appropriate funding for the maintenance of these buildings because they need new elevators. And I want to secondarily add to that, partner with our universities to create a trade system in a trade school so that we have the people to create the things that we need in state. That way, we can be proactive and not reactive at the expense of us, the residents. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Lindy Lewis. I live 16 East Brookline. I live on the 10th floor. My neighbor passed away last year on my sister's birthday. My neighbor, he was very sick. I would have to call the fire department to come in the heat while he sits outside on the bench from his doctor's appointment because the elevators are broken. We have 2 elevators in my building. The elevator in front of my door, it's been down for months. They come, put a Band-Aid on it, and then it's broke again. I'm not scared of Boston Housing, of no retaliation, because God is my savior, and I'm not scared of none of y'all or what y'all will do. So retaliation, I can care less about it. I thank you, Dawn, because like the last lady said, we have no representation. If it was your mama, your mama, your mama, your mama, something would have been done about it. We are black like this and not like this. So ain't nothing being done about it, and something needs to be done about it until bodies stop dropping. It seems like only time a problem gets fixed is when people start dying. So it seems like somebody's gonna have to die for y'all to fix the problem. So the money's somewhere, because it's going to migrants and everywhere else. The money can go for these elevators to be fixed. Thank you.
there anyone else for public testimony? Administrator Bach, would you like, I think we'll come to the end of the conversation. Would you like to make some closing remarks, and then we'll have our colleagues make closing remarks as well?
Just to thank our residents again for testifying, and to say that, you know, this is something that keeps me up at night all the time, and that I think that the more that folks hear what they've said today and the like urgent need for resources, the more quickly we're going to be able to address this. And so I do hope, you know, I'm very encouraged by the fact that we're able to launch this modernization for the 8 elevators, and a lot of those are at the addresses you've heard today. But I just want to validate that people have been waiting too long and dealing with too much in this. And so the BHA is going to continue to partner. We're going to continue to work on improving our systems for when things are down, but then also just working with all of you to get the resources so that our elevators are not down as frequently. So just really want to thank everybody. And thank you, Councillor Flynn, for convening us here today. Thank you,
Administrator Bach. Commissioner, would you like to make any closing remarks?
Hello. I'd like to echo everything that Administrator Bach said. Really thank the residents for coming out. As a person with a disability, I understand the challenges and the work it takes to come into City Hall and give their time like this, also waiting for a long time to speak. I really appreciate it. I've known Dawn for a long time. I really appreciate her advocacy. One thing I do want to say, just because I deal with this all the time, not just in this case, but in other cases, when people file complaints, I don't want everybody to leave this room thinking that you're not heard just because you haven't seen action. That's not to diminish the fact that no action has been taken, because I know that's critical, and we heard about it today. But a lot of the things that Dawn mentioned that she'd like to see happen, I know are happening. Like Administrator Bach said, they are getting an independent assessment. I know you mentioned, Dawn, things like let's not modernize things in old buildings. BHA is struggling with that because you don't want to put a bunch of money into a building that's just going to be knocked down in a few years. So there are so many moving pieces to this. I don't want the residents to feel like we're not working on it, because we are working on it. Again, the solutions need to happen much more quickly, but please hear that we've heard you today, that we will continue to work on it, and it is a major priority. Thanks again to especially the residents and to Dawn for coming out today.
Thank you, Commissioner. Dawn, would you like to make some closing remarks?
I don't think my mic, okay. I just want to make sure everybody that wanted to speak got a chance to speak. Okay, well, again, I just want to reaffirm my gratitude for being here. Councillor Flynn, to get this hearing for us today was very meaningful and appreciated by everyone. I want to thank everyone at the table who spoke. I am committed to collaborating in whatever way necessary, and I am happy to be a channel for the voices here in this room and beyond at the Ruth Barkley Apartments if I'm needed. If there's anything that I can contribute, please call on me.
Thank you, Dawn. Councillor Flynn, would you like to offer some closing remarks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very informative hearing this morning. I believe it was the most important hearing we've had in years at the City Council. I do want to acknowledge that it's disappointing that some of my colleagues are not here. Someone mentioned representation matters. Well, when City Councilors are not here for this important discussion, it hurts. I've focused on this issue for years, and I'm committed to continuing to working with the residents and with BHA to ensure that residents are treated with respect and dignity. I take that seriously. I take that personally. I believe this is a civil rights issue. And when it's a civil rights issue and it's federal law, you can't pick and choose what you want to abide by or not. I'm not placing blame on anybody. But what I am saying is saying that we don't have the money to address the elevator situation is unacceptable. Because in that case, that means we're picking and choosing which federal laws we're going to respect or not respect. This is a federal issue. This is a civil rights issue. It's impacting persons with disabilities. It's impacting our seniors. You're not asking for a lot. You're asking to be treated with respect. I think that's what you're here for. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Murphy?
Thank you. Thank you for chairing, which I agree, probably one of the most important hearings that we'll have when we're talking directly with residents and about issues that matter so much to their quality of life, to their family's quality of life and respect. It's important. I too am often disappointed. I know we've had many conversations when we were colleagues, then Councillor Bach, about attendance at hearings and how that matters, right? So we elect people, but we also have to show up after you elect us. And I know people's schedules, so I'm not calling out people. Yesterday, I thought a very important hearing about, our pools and this whole idea that the administration is committed to making sure every child can swim and learn. And we're having hard conversations about the Blackstone School, which is in your community, that, hasn't had a pool open for 2 years. And when not everyone shows up, it sends a message to the administration that we're not going to be a body that really is going to take on that political will. So I'm hoping that I'm wrong and that going forward that this is just the beginning. This hearing was important, but I'm looking forward to continuing to advocate on all of your behalfs to make sure that we get this right. And saying that we don't have the money, I do worry, because we just spent 3 years with so much money of opera funds, and I don't believe that it's taxing or finding new money to add to the budget. It's really looking at how we are spending the money we have. And if it's continuing to add bus lanes or free bus routes or a small group of people getting access to up to $75,000 per person for a down payment on a house, which are all real, they're really good programs, but if at the same time we have schools where less than 20% of our students are reading, and we have BHA housing where elevators are broken, that's unacceptable to me. We have to fix that first. And I know in politics we like to do the things that feel good. We like to go to the ribbon cuttings. Not all of us. I mean, I'm here because I don't think that is why I got elected. Those are fun, but it is our job to uplift what's not going right and advocate to get us back on the right track. So count me in as an ally, and thank you, Councillor Flynn, for getting us here. I know you show up into your community and talk to these residents directly, but it's important that we get you here into the chamber. This is your building, and that from here, where do we go from here? And I think that's on us to make sure that we continue to grow this advocacy. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. As the chair of the committee, I really do feel that the whole ADA accessibility issue, I know that we're already on a different department at the BTD. We're working our way through replacing ADA ramps across the city. I think that's taken many, many years to do in response to ADA requirements. I think we've heard that there is an intention to address these issues, and I really applaud and thank all of our residents from BHA for being here this morning. Your voices are very important. I think we heard you loud and clear this morning that you've got many, many frustrations and concerns about the situation. And I think as the chair of the Housing Committee, I'm making a commitment to work with Administrator Bach and anyone else who can help move these projects forward. Again, the bottom line is money. We have to find money. So I pledge to keep working on this, and want to thank everyone, Administrator Bach, Commissioner, and Dawn. Thank you so much for being here this morning as well. This hearing on docket 1298 and 1644 is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.